first just say a few words about this particular study, this little study. I collaborated with a Hong Kong UST student. He's a visiting student at our lab, Wang Chuyao, on cross-platform practices of netreds. I decided to use LiZiqi as a case, right? So I'd like to reflect a little bit on why I started to study LiZiqi. I actually have done a lot of work in this space, maybe before platform studies become a very popular term in the academia. I have already studied other types of internet spaces, right? So the fan spaces on the internet was one of my focuses. And I also recently published a paper in Chinese Journal of Communication on traffic media. I thought this actually is exactly what platform studies often mean, right? The social media platforms. When it comes to LiZiqi, right, I have always been interested in the human or the user side of the game, right? LiZiqi is a creator. Fans oftentimes are also very creatively exploring the boundary as well. So LiZiqi needs no introduction. You all know her. She's super popular, especially on so-called out of China platforms. She has most subscribers on YouTube as a Chinese language. She has more subscribers than CNN and CCTV on YouTube. And there have been a few studies showing that her fans on YouTube are actually overwhelmingly non-Chinese, right? These are not Chinese fans, going to YouTube to like her, right? So in addition to be popular on a platform outside of China, she is also popular actually inside China, right? She is a multi-platform practitioner. She has channels on Bilibili, Douyin, TikTok, Weibo, and she has her own websites as well, right? So I think LiZiqi will stand as a great case for cross-platform analysis. So what we did in this little study is to take an intercultural communication perspective to look at creators or netreds like LiZiqi. The theoretical perspectives we can take, such as creative workers, right? These creators are precarious labor, although they oftentimes also contain a tremendous potential of creativity. There have also been studies that take the subculture practitioner perspective by saying that these creators could, through their creation, somehow create a subculture that challenges the mainstream culture. So in this kind of studies, they often focus on subcultural identities such as gender, race, ethnicity. So in our study, we just are very curious about whether a multi-platform practitioner such as LiZiqi can actually do something with intercultural communications, right? So we asked two very specific questions. One is from the influencer side of view. How do they perform and practice on these different platforms? One is more from the user reception point of view, right? How do users actually react on these performances and practices? So we basically compared two platforms. One is YouTube and one is Bilibili. The data we collected are two types. One is what we call video meta information, right? So these are information that are not contained in the videos themselves. These are account information, descriptions of the videos, hashtags, and subtitles and captions. So we did a rather qualitative reading of these video meta information. We also scraped thousands of data, right? Thousands of comments from both YouTube and Bilibili videos LiZiqi posted. Then we did a computational topic modeling of these comments. Well, I wouldn't maybe spend too much time talking about the differences between the platforms. We all know that platforms are ecosystems. They have their own features and affordances. They are not necessarily the same, right? And in terms of Bilibili and YouTube, you could probably read yourself. There are multiple dimensions of differences that could condition, right, LiZiqi's practices. All right, let me continue to our findings. So our first set of findings, as I said before, focused on meta information of these videos. So we have found that LiZiqi started her Bilibili channel a year before YouTube, right? Her YouTube channel. So for that reason, on the YouTube channel, there are fewer videos than the Bilibili channel. But when you look at the videos that are on both channels, if you look at the videos themselves, right, they're almost identical, right? The content of the video, right, the sound, the music, the video, the images, they're almost identical. It seems to be like completely the same content. However, if you read into the meta information carefully, you find some very interesting contrasts. First, when LiZiqi moved the videos or posted the videos on the English channel, she had to translate the titles into English, right? So on YouTube, actually, LiZiqi provided both Chinese and English titles to her videos. But when we look at the English translations of these Chinese titles, we saw some very interesting differences. For instance, this one on Bilibili, the title was "Rooted in the Chinese soil, the tea culture is always rejuvenating." Right, but the same title, the same video, was translated to a different English title on YouTube. It says, "Tea is more than a drink, but a lifestyle." Right? You can see that on the YouTube title. In the YouTube title, the emphasis on the rootedness in the Chinese tradition has been removed. Right? Tea is presented as something like everyone from the world can enjoy as a lifestyle. Right? That's one interesting instance. The other interesting instance was the top 10 most viewed videos on these two channels are different. Although 6 of them are the same, but the other 4 top 10 videos on YouTube actually were different from the top 10 on Bilibili. And these 4 videos mostly focus on what we call the Pan-Asian cultural symbols that are not just the Chinese, right? So things like kimchi, tea, stuff like that, these were also popular or most viewed on YouTube compared to Bilibili. So from these instances, we think that in the LiZiqi team has probably adopted a strategy, and this strategy, we borrow the term from Kay, Chen, and Zen, the parallel platformatization. Right? They use this term to describe how platforms operate. Right? We borrow this term to describe how influencers practice on these platforms. Right? So LiZiqi and her team also use distinctive strategies to somehow suit the affordances, the content metrics, and the cultural context they find on these different platforms. That's our first set of finding. Let me continue with our next set of finding, which is based on computational data, topic modeling of thousands of comments. Right? So on YouTube, we found over 100,000 of comments. And our topic modeling generated basically 11 topics. We further organized the 11 topics into 3 themes. Right? So the first theme we found was the international audience's recognition of the Chinese rural origin of LiZiqi's videos. Right? So the words they often used in the comments, in this group of comments, right, were Chinese, China, village, country, right? That's the first theme. The second theme is basically what the audiences really like about these videos, the elements of the videos that make the audiences fall in love with LiZiqi's videos, right? They mentioned the expression, right, the music, the video, the angle of the images, all of that, right, in their comments. They also mentioned something like the content, right? So they like the cooking shown in the videos, they like the food, the flower, the puppy, the dresses, right, shown in the videos. So these represents a second group of so-called themes. The third group of themes refers to imagined parasocial relationship with LiZiqi, right? So audiences use these words to try to imagine there is a relationship. Although LiZiqi never really replied to any of the comments directly, the audiences try to imagine that relationship. So they refer to LiZiqi by describing their imagination of her roles, right? She's a woman, she is a princess. Sometimes they call her a sister, right? They also use descriptive words to describe what LiZiqi looks like or sounds like to them. She's amazing, she's lovely, cute, beautiful, etc. Right? Lastly, they actually use these action words, right, to express the willingness or the yearning, right, for building a relationship. They will say hi to LiZiqi. They say they love her, right? They want to marry her, so on and so forth, right? So that's what we found on YouTube. How about the Bilibili comments? First, the volume of the Bilibili comments is a lot larger, right? Bilibili we found over almost 500,000 comments. There are certain similarities when we look at the topics. While in terms of the video elements, right, audiences enjoy, they are actually very, very similar. Right? However, we also noticed some interesting differences. For instance, although the Chinese audiences are also drawn to the rural nostalgia expressed in the videos, but they emphasize a lot less on China. I guess because they assume that everyone in that discussion on this Bilibili platform are Chinese, right? So no specific emphasis on China. And although they enjoy food, cooking, right? But when they talk about the food, it becomes very, very specific. Again, it's because the Chinese audiences understand the content a lot better, a lot more in depth, right? Some interesting notices here, right? Here, Taobao appeared again and again in these comments, basically refers to how you can purchase the products shown in LiZiqi's videos, right? Taobao never really appeared in YouTube videos comments. And when it comes to parasocial relationship, again, very similar, but we noticed a small kind of a cluster of discussions by referring to LiZiqi as a man, right? Because she is as capable as a man, right? Lastly, this never appears in YouTube. YouTube comments never refer to Bilibili, but Bilibili comments regularly refer to YouTube. Okay, how YouTube comments say about the videos, how YouTube fans comment or react to the videos. Right? So two discussion points. We realize that LiZiqi and her team actually has a very challenging task in front of them. In order to keep their popularity in both their domestic and global market, they really have to deal with two rather different communities. Right? So we think that the strategy they adopted on YouTube is to present so-called the other side of China to international audiences. So this other China is different from the China you see in either the local Chinese media or the international mainstream media, right, such as CNN. To the domestic audiences, they just focus on presenting the China, right? The mainstream China you can understand or you can see in local Chinese media. So they immerse the audiences in these kind of a rural nostalgia, and they also remind them of their national pride. These content or all these fabulous food comes from China. Right? Second discussion point I'd like to make here is this. From the user's perspective, right, although they are consuming this similar content, we cannot really assume that they get the same interpretation out of the so-called similar content. The two communities still have some kind of a communication gap if you look at their comments. Well, the global community basically enjoys the videos because LiZiqi presents China as a distant wonderland, right, with this lost piece they don't find in their everyday life anymore, right? But the local community actually enjoys the same rural nostalgia, but they have some kind of additional satisfactions. Again, one is the mass consumption of the goods presented in the video, and second is a more kind of a bolder and radical interpretation of LiZiqi's female identity, right? Lastly, they actually get additional satisfaction by seeing themselves through the eyes of admiring foreigners, right? All these YouTube comments that admire LiZiqi's content. So I really love what Professor Haiqing has said about what to do, right? So, whatever studies we do, we should not end at just knowing what's going on, right? We always need to ask ourselves what actions can be taken, right, in order to address the reality. So I think at the academic layer, right, I'm asking us to do more multi-platform and cross-platform studies, right? To include both so-called Chinese and non-Chinese platforms in our academic efforts. Why do we need to do that? I actually have talked about such kind of research motivations in a paper I published in Annals of the ICA, right? So basically, I explained why we need to do comparisons across different national contexts, right? And why do we have to actually compare not just between the West and China, but also among the so-called southern cases that come from non-Western contexts. The motivation, the ultimate motivation of it, I think Professor Haiqing talked about digital China as method, right? So Yuzu Mizuguchi is actually the one who first ever coined the term China as method. So when he used China as method, he explained as a Japanese scholar why he wants to do a research using China as method. He actually said it very clearly because he wants to understand Japan through comparisons to China, to understand whether there are any alternative models of modernity, right? That was post World War II Japan, right? So I think similar here, right? Whatever we do here, the cross-platform comparisons we do here, ultimately we want to understand ourselves through comparisons to others. I guess that's why Professor Haiqing actually asked the question about what can we learn from Chinese style of platform governance, right? Multi-platform and cross-platform studies, I really hope we can see more students and younger scholars to join this effort in order to understand ourselves through comparisons to others. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you for listening, and I look forward to the discussions later.